with the City of Sacramento or the Office of Arts and Culture before. So we're going to go through a lot of basics, but I think it's also a great refresher for people who just haven't done this contract or this grant in several years. And also for people who are new to the organizations, I really noticed this time around, there are tons of staff changes. So it's great to see I can't see your faces, but it's great to have new people here today. I want you to know that if you have questions, as I'm going along, it may get a little bit confusing as we move through this information. It's very technical, or it's a little bit technical. And if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A. I'm going to stop periodically when I think it's sort of a good point to take questions from the Q&A, and there'll also be opportunities for you to unmute and ask a question if that's a little bit easier for you. So just bear with us as we work through this webinar format. So I think we're ready to start. Whoops, a little too far. And again, I said we're going to go through all of the requirements of the grant and the contract and insurance, and we're going to go through a lot of stuff that's all about what you must do and what we're going to need from you. And it's going to sound a little bit dry. So I just wanted to really begin with a welcome and a thank you and a congratulations to everybody who's here today. We are really excited about this grant. I know you did a lot of work on this grant application. It was a new application. It wasn't necessarily the simplest process to get through, but it was really rewarding for us because we gained a lot of information about organizations and what you're all doing. And we're really excited that we have 22 new organizations to the Cultural Arts Award program. And that's pretty extraordinary in these times to welcome 22 new organizations. So I really want to begin this with a welcome and a thank you for you and all the work that you do in your communities and all the work you do to promote arts and culture in the city of Sacramento. So did want to start with that. And the agenda for this afternoon, we'll try to get through it as quickly as possible, but we're going to take you through just basically a reminder again of what the Cultural Arts Award grants are and aren't, what the purpose of them is, and a little bit more information about this particular grant. We're going to talk about the contract and the terms of the contract, and that's going to include insurance requirements, the budget that you're going to have to provide, how to sign the agreement, how to execute the agreement, and then the next step after that is the procurement process, which means after you're under contract, then how do you get paid? So how we process invoices and how we pay you. We'll also talk a little bit about reporting requirements. So what's going to be asked of you through the life of your contract. We will touch upon this briefly, and then later on we'll go into more detail. And then at the very end, we're going to talk about what happens when the contract ends. And this is a 3-year grant, so how we move you seamlessly from one year to the next is going to be the final topic. So what are the Cultural Arts Awards? As a reminder to you all, this is one grant that is supported by both the City and County of Sacramento. This is the reason that it's taking a little bit longer to get it processed, because not only does it have to be approved by our Arts Commission in the City of Sacramento, but it also has to be approved by the County Board of Supervisors. And I believe it's going to be approved at next week's meeting. I think it's on the agenda. So as soon as it's totally approved, then we can really begin the contract process. And this is all in preparation for that. So I want to get you and get all your information ready so that when we can go to contract, we can move through really quickly. All the information will be there, and we can move you along. We are really excited that this year's pool was $950,000. And that is the biggest pool ever that we've had for this award in 1 year, which allowed us to give larger grants than we've given in the past and to give more grants than we've given in the past. And we really hope to keep this pool of funds relatively steady for the next 2 years. We can never guarantee city funds from 1 year to the next. We do our contracts and our appropriation of funds year by year, but our goal is to try to keep it at least as high as it is, and you never know, hopefully to grow it. So again, it's a 3-year program, so you're not going to have to do a full application again until the end of 2024 for the next round of the grants. So you will have some reporting to do, but that grant application was really your last for this program. So that's the good news. Your score will stay the same for the 3 years. So so your funding will probably be in the same range. It may differ slightly from year to year. Again, hopefully we can grow it, but it's going to stay based on the same score that you received in this round. And also great news is there is a good possibility for additional American Rescue Plan funds for city grantees for sure, which would mean that you will probably have to provide extra information, not a full grant application, but some extra requirements that the city and our attorneys and auditors and the federal government will require from you. But then we can add on some additional funding, and it's looking like that will probably roll out sometime around September, but I don't have any hard and fast dates for that. But there will be more funding attached to this grant. And I do say right now it would be for city only because they are city funds, but we really are working in conversation with the county to see if we can add county funds to this as well. So that's it for what the grants are. So now we're going to just walk you through the contract. And I mean, I'm really going to take you, you don't have it there in front of you, but I'm going to take you piece by piece through the contract, because what you're going to receive is a document by email, which is a long, multi-page contract. And it's a little bit dense and it's got a lot of legalese in it, but I just want to hit the highlights so you understand what some of the elements are in the contract. So the contract always begins with a background. It will tell you what this grant is and a little bit about the history of the grant, but it's really going to tell you all the basics that you need to know. So it's going to tell you whether or not there are any matching funds required. And as you remember, I hope, there are no matching funds. In previous years, you've had to match it often as a one-to-one match, but here these are just straight funds to you. You don't have to document any match. It will be, your funding amount will be right on the front of your grant, and it's going to be obviously the amount that you were awarded, and it's going to match that amount specifically, and it's going to be specific to each grantee. And it will also talk about the term or the length of the contract. And this contract specifically, based on the time it's going to take to roll them out to you, is going to end on May 31st, 2023. So it's approximately a 1-year contract. The disbursement of funds, it's going to tell you how the funds will be handed out to you after everything is done. The very first amount of money you'll receive after the contract is executed will be 75% of the total funds. In past years, we have done a 90% first payment and then a 10% second payment. In some occasions when we did it that way, people didn't feel that the last 10% was worth the time it took to do the reporting. And the reporting is so important to us that we really wanted to make sure we had an added incentive for you to do the reports. So we are giving you 75% when the contract is signed, and then you'll get 25% with your midterm report. And that's going to be due on October 30th. So that would be the earliest date that you could get your second portion of this grant for the year. And the midterm report, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later, is only going to include 2 documents. You're going to do a program location form, very similar to what you did in your application, slightly updated. And we're going to do something called a data arts report for 2021. And I'll tell you a little bit more about what that report is later. So those are the only things that are going to be due in your midterm report. Then after that, you're going to have your final report, which is going to be due on February 28th. And that's just going to include a final budget. So basically, you're going to tell us up front, and we'll talk about that in a minute, what you're going to spend the money on. And then the final budget is just confirming that you actually did spend it in the categories that you said you were going to spend it, and all the money has been dispersed. And it's just going to be an update to that program location. So as you can see, it's really important for us to know where you do your programming. That's been important to City Council. It's been important to our commissioners. We really want to know what's happening around the entire county. It's also your grant contract is going to tell you that you need to keep documentation for 5 years. So this is the first time for this grant that we have not required you to submit to us receipts. In the past, we made you account for every single dollar you spent by sending us, canceled checks, paid invoices, receipts that you had. And we're just not going to ask you to do that anymore. But we are going to expect you to keep that information. And according to this grant and most of the grants with the city, you're going to need to keep that documentation somewhere, separate for 5 years, because at any time the city could audit you in terms of how you spent that grant. And I know it's happened. Everything that I tell you, even if it's rare, it has happened at least once. So I really advise you to pay attention to that and keep your documentation. Also, if you can't spend the funds for whatever reason, you must return them, and that always happens as well. So an example of that would be if your organization just decided to disband. It wasn't going to keep its nonprofit status. It was, not going to exist throughout the year, and you were only able to spend a certain portion of the funds, but you had received more, we would ask you for those funds back, and you would send them as a check. And again, that often happens at least once for every grant cycle. So just be aware of that. The next are your responsibilities, and that's going to be the next piece of the contract. It's just going to outline what the city expects for the grant. Obviously, the reports are submitted on time. That's super important to us. We really value these reports. We read them, we pay attention to them. We will end up culling all of your data arts reports and using that as documentation about what's happening, around the city and the county in terms of our arts. So it's important that we collect this information. We do ask that you make yourself available for site visits. Within the year, we are really going to try for everybody who has a facility or a physical space or an activity to have staff members come and visit, and also perhaps commission members to come and visit your sites, to talk to you, to see what you're doing, to talk to you about your programs, your needs, your challenges. And we want to see what your events are. We want to be able to see what types of things you're producing, what types of events or performances you're having. So we would want to have you make available 2 event tickets per year to some event or some activity that you're having. And we would contact you directly. So we don't go to your box office, or we don't go to your director. We go to whoever the grant contact is. And if there's something that we feel like we need to see, or if there's something that you think that you would really like us to see, please contact us and just keep us in the loop. And we would like to be able to have access to that. Also communicate with us. The grantee responsibilities is that you keep in touch. You don't go dark at any time. Sometimes it's really difficult to contact staff members for an organization. And when we can't reach you, we don't know what's going on. So if you have a leadership change, your executive director is gone, your primary grant contact has changed, continue to let us know about that and to keep up with us. We do ask that you credit the Office of Arts and Culture for the award, just as you would with any other donor or any other funder for you. So on our website, on the front page of the website, there's a link to be able to download our logos. It's just, very simple. It just tells you how to credit the Office of Arts and Culture and to use our logo on any promotional materials that you use, that you acknowledge donors and at the level that we have given to you. Sign up for our newsletters, please. Also find out what else is happening. We're going to have other opportunities that may affect you and certainly will affect the constituents that you work with. We're going to have lots of other grant opportunities. We have workshops throughout the year. Basically everything that we offer is free of charge, and we really want you to take advantage of whatever opportunities we might have. And also attend programs. We'll send you out reminders. We'll send you invitations to things. Many of them are going to be virtual for a while, but some will be in person. So we would love to see you at events. There is a condition that no religious messages are tied to the funds. I always feel like I just need to at least mention that. It's rare, but it does happen. And again, because these are government city funds, that we cannot have any religious messages tied to them. And everything that you've submitted to us and continue to submit to us, including your grant applications and your reports and everything else, they're all subject to the California Public Records Act. So everything that is submitted as part of this grant is public record. Okay, and the city can terminate awards. It's again, very, very rare, but each one of these cases I can tell you has happened in the last several years. If there is any kind of improper use of funds, and it's really just using funds for reasons that you did not say you were going to use them for. We're so specific in the grant in terms of how you can use the funds, and we just want to make sure we've made it general enough that I'm sure you can all use funds in the areas that are needed. And still fit within the requirements. If you don't submit reports, we can terminate the award. And again, because this is a multi-year award, it's really important that you keep up with your reporting so that you can receive your next year's awards. There are some organizations that haven't yet submitted their final reports from the last grant that they received. And we're not going to be able to go to contract with these organizations until we receive those reports. So knowing moving forward, please do so. And if you have any struggles with the reports, contact me immediately. We'll help you through them. And again, if there's any pending litigation regarding the use of the funds, your award could be terminated for that reason. So the acceptable use of funds. And again, we try to make this as basic as possible. These are general operating funds. So we stick to the real basics, and it's going to say this in your contract. These are the ways you can use the fund. So obviously salaries for any of your staff and any of the benefits that are associated with your salaries, your workman's comp, your health insurance, any other kind of benefits that you pay, payments to artists, so stipends to artists or contracts with artists, performers, any consultants who work with you, you can use your funds for, any consumable supplies, so supplies that you use up, whether they're office supplies or production supplies, but again, think in terms of consumable supplies. Any marketing, public relations, or communications costs are eligible. Rent, utilities, mortgage, those are big ones, and that's a great category to use your funding. And remember, these are for facility rent, utilities, and mortgage, not if you have a home office. We can't use these funds for that purpose. And then there's a little category you're going to see on your grant that's just going to say other, which means there may be something that we haven't thought of to be very explicit about, but you want to use your funds for that. You have to describe it. So you can't just say other and put a big amount, and it really can't be more than 10%, because anything more than that should really fall into the other categories. Oops, sorry. Now, the unacceptable uses of funds, there are lots of those. Program expenses that happen outside of the county. Many of you maybe tour nationally or regionally or internationally, which is great, but we can't use this fund to support that work, because these really are meant to support things happening for our citizens of the county. Anything that's not open to the public, so private events, member events, invitation only events. If you're having a particular, event that honors your volunteers or your donors, the costs associated with that event can't be part of this grant. Obviously, any regranting or fundraising. And when I say fundraising, it doesn't mean if you have a development director that we can't pay that salary. That's totally okay. It's just any other fundraising costs, which usually tend to be fundraising events. Any support for school residencies. I know this sounds like an odd one, but it is part of our contract, except for one-time events. So if you're doing like really in-depth school residencies, we ask that you use these funds for another purpose. This is also another big one that people sometimes get caught on, non-consumables. Please don't spend the money on computers, musical instruments, office equipment, anything that would be more than $1,000 would be considered a non-consumable, non-eligible expense. No facility or land purchases, no renovation, no construction, no maintenance, food or hospitality. Those are all unacceptable. And again, anything already funded by the city. So be careful if you already have a number of existing grants that fall in the same period of time. Be sure that you're keeping every expense separate. And we do have ways to kind of, internal systems that check against grants in different areas, just to make sure that we're not funding the same thing twice. And we want to make sure that we use our money as widely as possible. So I'm going to stop there. If anybody has any questions before we move on, that's a lot. And that pretty much covers what's in your contract. And I don't see any questions. So if everybody's good, we're going to move on to the next. Oops, I see one person has their hand raised. Let's see. Will we get a copy of this presentation, Cynthia? We probably won't email a copy of the presentation, but we will load it up on our website, soon after this. So if you want to go back and refer to anything, thanks for asking that question. I should have said that beforehand. So it will be on our website, and I've got links in a couple of different places that you might want to check out. So that'll be really helpful, and we'll make sure that's up on our website. So the other big thing that you're going to need to have as part of this grant is liability insurance. And it's basically commercial general liability. Oops, I see another couple of questions. All right, I'm going to answer these questions before we move on. Just to clarify, flooring maintenance would not be acceptable. If it's maintenance, I would probably, Sarah, we would probably have to have a conversation about that. If it's something that's sort of just ongoing maintenance, but if it's anything that you have to hire in a contractor to replace something, there's sort of a difference between that and somebody who comes in and just, cleans the floors periodically. There would be a difference according to the city. And we can really talk about that later offline. In terms of food, what is it? What if it's part of the budget for a specific event? Should it be removed? For this funding, yes, we would just ask you to, put in other expenses for that event. And what's the expected timeline for the ARP funds? It cut out just as I said the date. Well, that's no good. The expected, and it's really just very vague right now. We're looking probably at September, but please know that we'll give you updates way before then and let you know when it might be coming. I just hate to put in a time frame and promise anything if it's not going to happen. And for the requirement that funds cannot cover anything already paid for by the city, does that include rent for city property? Yeah, Jessely, I'm not sure what you mean by that. If you are renting something from the city, I'm assuming you're talking about renting space where the city is the landlord on that space. That could be covered. Yes. I mean, if the city is charging you that money, yes, that could be covered. Okay. Okay. Whoops. Someone asked, will we be receiving the scorecard or feedback from how our grants were graded? No, you don't automatically receive it. What I would suggest you do is on our YouTube channel, we have the actual videos of the panel reviews, so you can watch those. And if you specifically request, you would just have to submit a request in writing about any specific comments that the panelists might have made about your application, knowing that a lot of their comments they made in the panel process. They only actually added comments to the application if there were suggestions that could help you in the future. And if you request those from me by email, I would have to call them from the application and then I could send them to you. So just know it would take a few days to get those back. But yes, we can find, they really did try to be as helpful as possible, but please do listen to the panel reviews of the application, because I think that's going to be most helpful. All right, now I am going to move on to the liability insurance. You can't even begin your contract unless you have this. So this is often you think of something that you might need to get later on. This is something that you're going to need to have upfront. It is all of the requirements are in your grant application, so you can actually just share that with your insurance broker. I will also have available to send to you a sample of what a certificate could look like. Couple of mistakes that people make is they send me the policy. The city won't accept an entire insurance policy. We will only accept certificates that state what your insurance policy covers. And one extra thing we need to have, and this is a little bit different, is the city must be covered as additionally insured. And don't stress about that right now. If you've never done that, just know that I'll send you a sample, and I would say bring it to your insurance broker. It's a little bit of an add-on to a regular policy, but not much. And if you've ever done business with the city or probably other, government entities, maybe the school districts, you probably had to do that as well. So again, certificate, not the policy, and before we go to contract. So I will right now be requesting these, and when I send you all an email with more information, it's just going to be a reminder for you to get those to me as soon as possible. If you send me a certificate, we have to check to make sure that it's not expired. So you may have one on file right now, but it might be due to expire in the next 30 days. That probably is not going to fly with the city. If it looks like it's going to expire in a few months, that's okay. We'll take it now, but know that you have to continue to update it, and you'll actually have to send renewed policy certificates to an address that's located on the actual contract document. So, and that's to a place called Exegesis. Don't worry about it. It's all in your contract, but just know that these things need to be always current throughout the life of your grant. And know that the city can, and will terminate your contract if the insurance is expired. We'll know if it's about ready to expire, and we'll be able to tell you and just keep you updated. It's usually pretty quick that an insurance agent or an insurance company can get you that certificate. It's often in a matter of days, and particularly if you've already got one, it's really easy to update them. And I will send you a sample that you can share with your people so that they know what it looks like. So to prepare your contract, so this is us getting ready to go to contract with you. Next week, the Board of Supervisors, if all goes well, has it on their agenda and they approve these awards and they're ready to go out, we start the contracting process. As long as we receive your certificate of insurance and something else, which I'm going to send to you tomorrow, which is going to be your budget narrative. And don't stress out about this. It's a really simple little form where it just has the categories with which you can spend the money: salaries, supplies, consultants, artist fees. It will give you all of the categories, and all you have to do is match your grant to any or all of those categories. If you want to spend it all on salaries, you can do that. If you want to break it down among many different areas, as long as it adds up to the exact amount of your grant, because that's going to become part of your contract. You're going to send that little form back to me, and we're going to attach it to the back of your contract, and that's going to go along with you to you for signature. So again, most important thing is the total matches the exact amount, even if it's down to 33 cents of your contract and of your grant. And I always recommend only include the categories that you know that you're going to spend. So what happens if, in 2 months, we get another variant of, COVID and public spaces shut down? what are the things that you know are going to be ongoing expenses, whether or not you're performing, whether or not you're, exhibiting? What are the things that you know you're going to need to spend money on? So it might be your rent, it might be on some staff salary or artist stipends. Make sure you use those categories because you're going to be able to document them no matter what happens. They're going to be really easy. You can prove that you spent money in those areas and you'll have no problem with your grant. So that's what I would suggest. Okay, and then once you've got all of that and we've got everything that we need, we're ready to send you the contract. And if you had a grant with us 3 or 4 years ago, we sent you these contracts all by mail. They were all hard copy contracts and you signed them all and you sent them back. So we don't do that anymore. It's a little bit easier, but you just have to be, more conscious of it. It's an e-signed document. So we want to know that you're ready to receive it. In your grant application, you put down the name of the head of your organization, whether it was your executive director, whoever is the lead person in your organization. According to our records, we have that person listed as the person who signed your contract and that person's email address. If that's not the case for you, if for some reason in your organization, the president of the board signs contracts or the development person signs contracts or the program person signs them, you need to send me an email and let me know that we need to change whoever the signer is. So if it's the head of your organization, then we should be fine. And if it's not, then just let me know, because this e-document will be going to that person and we expect whoever it goes to by email to be the signer. In some cases, you require 2 signers. If that's true, I'm also going to ask you to send me the additional name and email of who the second signer is. Because these are e-documents, they're going to be emailed consecutively to the different people who sign them. So if you have a first signer and a second signer, it will need to go to them and it all comes from us. So that's just a little, it's a thing that can somehow slow things down because sometimes we have to go back and start all over again. So you're going to see this at the very end of the document. There's going to be a place to sign. There's also going to be a checkbox for the type of organization you are. Every single one of you, I believe, should check the box for corporation. We're all nonprofit corporations. We're some type of corporation. I don't believe that any of you fall into any of the other types of entities. You're going to write in your name and the title, and there'll be lines for that. You're going to see where that's done. You're going to need to write in your federal ID and your state ID number. And then there's going to be a line that says your business operating tax license number. You're going to put exempt because, again, you need to put exempt because we're all nonprofits here and nobody needs a business operating tax license for this grant. So those are the things that are going to be there. And I see one question. Adrian's been waiting patiently, so I'm going to take this question now. Would general liability insurance, workman's comp, be something that is covered by this grant? Yeah, it's a business expense. So yes, you can put that in as your business expense. You're going to have to, obviously, for the purposes of this grant, you're going to need that insurance before you get any money. So, but it is actual expense that we could work with. So that's it. So that's how you sign the contract. It begins with you and whoever your signer is, and then it goes to me, and then it goes to about 4 other people around the city. And it will go to the city attorney. So they'll be looking at things to make sure everything is correct. It goes to the city manager's office. It goes to the head of our department. So it does have to get signed by a number of different people, and anybody could catch something along the way. So just want to make sure that everything is in good shape before you do it. Which is one reason I always go back to checking your business status. I do know one organization that's received this grant is in the process of updating their paperwork to get their business status, charitable status in good standing again. I really recommend you do one more check on yours unless you're absolutely sure everything is is in good shape because somebody in the city will check this before they put that final signature on the grant contract, and it will stop it if for any reason. And it's usually just filing that hasn't been done or is a little bit late. And you just might need to, make sure that all your documentation's in. It can all be done online, but it does, it is a process. So these are two websites. You can check either at the State of California Department of Justice Search of Charitable Trusts or the California Secretary of State Business Search, and either one will give you the information that you need. You just write in the name of your nonprofit, your legal name, and it will say whether or not it's current, everything's in good standing or not. So do check that one more time because we'll be checking in on our end as well. So it's better not to be surprised and to know in advance. So that's your contract. So let's just say everything went through, you got all the proper documentations, contract is signed, we're good to go. That brings you to the next step of working with the city and now getting your grant. And again, some of you have probably gotten other grants with the city, so this is not new information, but I just want to go through it again because some things maybe have changed. So we can't just pay money to anybody. Everybody that we pay money to needs to be registered as a vendor with the city. So you may have registered as a vendor a couple of years ago, but haven't done any business with the city since then. You may have an expired registration, so you would need to check on that. And if you've never registered as a supplier or vendor, you can go right to our website where it's artscityofsacramento.org. How do I? And there will be one section where it says, how do I register as a vendor with the city? And it takes you right to the portal that you need to go to do that. Doesn't cost you anything. It isn't particularly hard. The only thing that we ask is that you've already filled out a W-9 and a 590 form, both tax forms, and you have those ready to go when you register as a vendor. And you don't try to do it, you put in a little bit of information and then you say, oh, I need to go get a document. I'll come back to this tomorrow and finish it. Please don't do that. When you're ready to register as a vendor, do it all at once, because people have tried and they've stopped the process and then they've gone back in and it looks like they're trying to register a second business and all kinds of alarms go up. So again, it's not really hard to do. If you have any problems, let me know, but really go in and do that. And you can do that right now. Please don't wait to get your grant. If you're not registered as a vendor, please do that right away. And you can also go in and just check the portal and make sure that you're still registered. But if you've had any business with the city in the last year, for example, you're probably in there and don't have to worry about that. But that will be the first step because we need that to get you paid. So we go through a process. So we've got your grant application and then it has to get executed and it gets a number that the city clerk gives to it. And when all of that is done, then we start the back end process of procurement, which is a multi-step process just to make sure that you have access to the money that's been set aside for your grant. So you will receive in the mail a PO number by email. A lot of people call up and say, I just got this email with a PO number. What do I need to do with it? You don't need to do anything with it. You just know that that's your PO number. And now you are really ready to get paid because that's the one last piece that you need to get your first grant check is your PO number. So once the PO is assigned, all invoices, this is really important, will be submitted by us for you. You will not submit any invoices. And I please tell you, don't try to submit an invoice on your own. It will not work as well. So we will be submitting all the invoices as soon as we get the go ahead and the PO. We're going to have them ready to go and we'll submit the invoice for your 75%. We do offer automatic payment options. So if you don't want to get a check cut, you can sign up for that. There, you would have to send an email to Central Accounts Payable at City of Sacramento. And they will, after you've registered as a vendor, and they will be able to help set you up an account. You have to fill out a little form and put your banking information. So that's only if you don't want to get a check and you want to get an automatic deposit, excuse me. We will say the first payment can arrive up to 30 days after the receipt of the invoice. So it's not after the contract is signed, it's after the receipt of the invoice. And that's just what the city says as is policy. Often it's much quicker than that, but we can't guarantee anything quicker than 30 days. We ask that you don't call the city's finance office and ask where your money is. But if you feel like it's been more than 30 days, please contact me and we will check on our end. It's much quicker and it's much easier to do it that way. You're not going to be getting multiple payments, just going to be 2 payments. The first one will be the 75%. And if you manage to spend that right away, we still can't give you your second payment until after October 30th. But if we've got all your reports on October 30th, we're ready to roll. We'll submit your second invoice. We don't need to do anything else besides that. And you will have your second payment. And for any reason, again, if it's delayed, please call us, please call me. Don't call the city's payable office or shoot me an email and we'll make sure that we work it out. They're usually pretty good about getting payments out quickly if everything is in order. So see if I have any more questions before we go to reporting requirements, because that's really our last section. Do you need to put in the exact amount to be sent in each category, or can you change the amount used in each category? Yes, put it in. I'm not going to stress out if you change the categories later, as long as you still use the same category. So you may decide to put, if you have $5,000, you may decide to put $4,000 into salaries. And then you realize, oh, I think, rent was something that we needed to pay that, use that money for more. When you do your final report, you'll just readjust the categories. So yeah, we're not going to stress, as long as you stay within the applicable categories, that's all fine. You use the money the way you need to use it. Let's see, there's some things in the chat. Okay, is there anything new? What is a 590? Valerie, that's just another tax form. You just look up tax forms 590. It's really about who's paying you the money, and it will have we'll put the city of Sacramento on the top line and the city of Sacramento's address. It's just an additional tax form that you can get. And if you want, I can send you one. Our organization has only ever required 1 signatory for contracts, but we require 2 signatories for checks. You just need 1. Yes, absolutely. Just need 1 in this case, Megan. That'll be fine. Okay. Okay, I think that's everything in that questions. All right, so whoops. So the last section is just reporting requirements, and really, because we put you through so much to do the application, we're really going to try to make the reports as simple as possible, I hope. So the first report's going to be due October 30th. And the big part of this report, it's called a data arts report. And I'm not going to really talk a lot about that tonight, because I don't want to confuse you. You don't need to think about it immediately, but it's something that we're going to be requiring for the life of your contract. And it's all done with an organization called SMU Data Arts. And here's the website if you want to find out a little bit more about them and what they do. We will probably do a webinar that's just for our grantees that tells you exactly how to fill out this report. And get it done. But if you're really anxious to find out how to do a data arts report and maybe even want to get an early start on it, they're really useful reports. They're free to you, and they sum up the entire picture. They'll give you a snapshot of what went on in your organization, from attendance at events to the number of volunteers versus staff to financial pictures. It's just a really wonderful, useful tool that we use in order for us to do planning and advocacy around funding for the arts in Sacramento. So we do require one from you. So again, they offer webinars monthly and they're free and you can just go and attend one. They're all online. And the next one they're offering is May 3rd. So if you're interested, just get on their website and take a look. And just know that in the next couple of months, or probably next 3 or 4 months, we'll be offering one to the community. So that's a specific report. And you'll go right into Data Arts and it'll be the Sacramento Office of Arts and Culture Data Arts Report for whatever the year we're going to ask for is 2021. And then you'll just fill out the forms. They offer you lots of technical support. And then you would upload that right into your GoSmart report portal. And we'll talk more about that later. Just know that's coming. And then we'll also email you a new program location form. It's going to be very much like what you did for the grant application. We just cleaned it up a little bit and got more specific so that people can all report exactly the same kind of information about where they do their programming and the addresses and things like that. And that's all we're going to ask of you for the midterm report to end up getting the rest of your money. So we'll need both of these reports to get your second payment. So that's the midterm report. And then the final report is really at the end of this grant year, and it's due on February 28th. And again, it's just another update of the program location report. So if you're just keeping that going, you'll just probably have to upload a couple of months of new programming. And that's only, and then your final budget. So what did you really spend the money on? As we said, in case you changed categories, we're just going to ask you, we're going to send you the same form. So this is super easy for the final report. Excuse me. And that final report gets you ready for next year's funding. That's all you have to do. And once that's done, we begin the contract process again for the next year. We'll give you the amount of your award, put it in the new contract, send out new budget pages, and we'll do new contracts. And that'll happen for the next 2 years after that. So hopefully that's not too difficult. And again, we're here to help you in any step of this process. There's my email address. Please contact me with any questions about your award, how to complete your budget, any general questions you might have. And Josh Bartholomew is the person that's going to help with the contracts. So he would be the person, and there is his email address, to whom I would like you to send your insurance certificates. He's putting everything together to get these contracts out really quickly, and he's going to facilitate that. And when I send you an email tomorrow, I'll have Josh's email in there as well. And again, arts@cityofsacramento.org is our website. So if you haven't signed up for our newsletters and information, please do, because we have a lot of programs coming up and we want you to be able to take advantage. So that's all I have. I'm going to go into the questions in the chat and see if we have more questions. So please feel free to put them in there. When is the budget narrative due? Is that due prior? Yeah, that's before we can even send you a contract. It's going to be due right away. So again, start looking at what you think your expenses are going to be. We're going to send that out to you right away. That is part of your contract. So we can't wait for that piece of it. We need you to know what you want to spend that money on now. Do we get reminders on the reporting deadlines? You absolutely do. You're going to hear from me probably more than you want to hear from me about reporting, because I know it's really hard to keep track of all of these things once we're in the middle of everything. Let's see, for fiscal year 21 or 22, Allie, I think you're talking about the Data Arts report is what I'm guessing, and that would be 2021. We usually, we know that not everybody has a different fiscal year and some really don't end right away. So we're going back a little bit to see what your reports are. And it's not, it's not like we're trying to uncover or unmask anything. It's just really our way of seeing what the state of the field is. When can we publicly announce? As soon as we get the go ahead from the county, I'm going to send out your official letter. So what I sent to you Previously was just an email saying there's your preliminary award. When I send you out, it'll be an attachment to an email, and it'll be a letter on letterhead, and that will be your award letter. And as soon as you get that, I encourage you to publicly announce it, because we'll be doing that too. We'll put out a public announcement about these grants and let people know the great organizations that are being supported this year. Where can we find the loss payee information for the liability insurance certificate? I don't know what you mean by loss payee information, but I'm going to send you a sample certificate so you can see what it should look like. It's really just the certificate, which just says what your insurance is. And then there's often a second page, and it's just called additionally insured. And there's a specific template for it. Yeah. So we'll send that to you, and you could send that to your insurance people. Can an organization claim if a hall is rented for an art program? Yes, but again, I'm going to say, if you're going to put that in your budget for something, remember, everything that goes in your budget is for something you're going to spend money on, not something that you already spent money on. And I wouldn't put any expenses that you don't think are going to happen until, I mean, nothing before May 1st, I would say, just to, give yourself time. So if you are planning to rent a hall and you absolutely know for sure you're going to be renting that hall, yes, that can be an expense. But I just encourage you to, just be really cautious that you're putting categories where you're going to spend the money. But if you feel like that's a good one, yeah, go ahead and do it. Sure. Let's see. I saw. I see a raised hand. Whoops. Okay. Any other last questions? Will you show again the screen that shows acceptable use of funds? Oh, I got to share again. Oops. Is that sharing? Dan, I can't tell.
It is.
Okay. Oops. There we go. Acceptable use of funds, salaries and benefits, and these will all be in your budget narrative. So you'll see these different categories listed. Salaries and benefits, payments to artists, performers, consultants, anybody that you would normally pay to do business, consumable supplies, marketing, public relations, communications. So if you have to maintain a website, or you actually do postcards or any marketing pieces, you advertise, those are all fine. Rent, utilities, or mortgage payments, a lot of times those are the big expenses if you have to rent a space. And then the other category needs to be anything that's not in the unacceptable use of funds. And I'm going to ask you on that little line to describe what you meant by other. I know in the past we had a dance company, and there was a question about whether dance shoes were consumable or not a consumable. So, but, and the organization made a good case that the dance shoes get used up and pretty quickly, and you can't wear them for very long. And we did allow that expense. If it's something like that, I would say put it in the other category. If I have any question about it, I'll get back to you right away and we could figure something out. But I definitely say put it in the category. Okay. Let's see. Am I missing any other last questions or anything in the chat? Adrian, I have you raise your hand. I don't see what your question is. Oh, can an organization claim an online art program? Again, you'd have to tell me what the expense is associated with that. Um, if you're not paying anybody to offer it, if there is no kind of, maybe you're paying us, your Zoom subscription or something like that, but um, it's got to be something that you're paying money for, because we're giving you this grant so that you could use this money to pay for something. So if it's got to be in these acceptable uses of funds, you would probably have to be paying whoever was providing the online art program. That's the only thing I can think of, unless you gave out materials. So perhaps it was an art program where everybody had to get a set of materials to bring home and work on the project. That could be considered a good expense. But Myrtle, if you have like really specific questions that you just really want to like run by me, why don't you email me and we could talk about them if you feel like there's still some areas that you're not sure about what you want to spend the money for. Okay, where we're going to put the recording. It will be on usually we try to put it on the home page of our webinar. And if it's not, of our website. And if it's not on the front page of the website, then there is a little tab for grants. Go right to the grants section. We'll try to make sure that it's somewhere that is really easy to find for everybody, and we'll get it up ASAP. So I think that's it. So I hope it was helpful. I'm sorry if it sounded like, a whole bunch of requirements and, but I do think once we get through the contracting process, everything is usually pretty smooth after that. But my goal here today was to not get anybody hung up in this contracting or early part of the process where they find out that they have to wait, longer than they would want to wait. You've already waited long enough to get these funds. So the goal is to move you through as swiftly as possible. So hopefully that helps. Liability insurance and costs like web hosting, office supplies, etc. Yes, yes, and yes, those are all perfectly acceptable. All right, everybody. I'm going to end here now. Know that you have my email address. You know where to find me. So if there are questions that come up to you later after you've listened to this and thought about it for a while, or after you get your budget, and please email me and we'll talk about it. And I really hope to see you all this year. Oh, one last thing. We're having an event tomorrow. It's at McClatchy Park. And it's at 11 a.m. and it's to celebrate Arts, Culture, and Creative Economy Month. It's going to be a wonderful event. It's just about an hour. We're going to have performances from the Poet Laureate and Teatro Nagual and Sacramento Taiko Don and a couple of other people. And the mayor is going to be there. And it's just going to be a really nice event. So if you have time and you're in the neighborhood, please stop by. I think there's information on social media and our website and everything about that. So hope to see as many of you as can come. And thanks for coming tonight.